I'm Ben Paskowitz with NTS Tire Supply, and I'm here today with Sean Higgins of Michelin, and we're going to talk about egg tires today. And in case you need a new tire acronym in your life, we're going to talk about PFO tires, and also about how to get the ability to vary your air pressure in the field. We're gonna go over that a bit, and also going to discuss about comparing running duals versus singles, how to reduce your air pressure in your field and applications like that. But before we get into all that, Sean, I guess I was going to just ask you about the Michelin mascot. I think there's kind of an interesting story behind the big white Michelin.
There is. So the Michelin man, Bibendum is his name. Bib was conceived by the original Michelin brothers. They saw a pile of tires, and the way it was stacked, back then they didn't have the carbon black in the tires, so the tires were white.
Really?
And yeah, and so they saw it and said, this looks like a man. That could be kind of a cool mascot, if you will, for our fledgling company here. And so Bibendum was born, and he's gone through a lot of iterations over the years and a lot of changes. But the name, oh man, and I'm sorry to take Latin when I was growing up. I apologize. But basically, it roughly translates into it drinks up the potholes. Right, it drinks up the bumps.
Yeah.
So because the tire was so good at making the ride so much better, you think about when he came out, roads were incredibly primitive. Automobile business was in its infancy, and he was kind of a cool bib. He was my favorite bib. He had a cigar. He had a martini glass, and bib has changed.
That was the original one.
That was one of the very originals.
Yeah.
Yes, we've done some of this throwback stuff. And you can find those ads out there. I'm kind of looking for them actually to get posters up in my own office. But yeah, so Bib has been around for a very long time, and we honor him a lot in a lot of the names. So a lot of the tires that you've and your staff has put together out to have here today, they'll have kind of a homage to his name and kind of everything we do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the rounded I didn't realize that was like a stack of tires. I don't know why I didn't make that connection.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. So, and it used to look much more. It's been softened over the years as Bib has evolved. But yeah, that's originally what it's born out of. So
Okay. So absorbing the potholes.
Yeah.
So was Michelin making tires like back, I guess, right when they were first coming out on vehicles, probably?
Started with bicycles.
Okay.
They really started out, the Michelin brothers started out, looking at a solution for bicycle tires. And when you look at the very first ones, it was such a pain to mount and dismount those tires. They weren't a tire that we think of today, right? When you think about on your bicycle or maybe for your kids or something like that. So it was a much more adhered, and there was a whole process for doing this, and it was real pain, and they weren't terribly comfortable or reliable. So they saw that and just said, boy, how can we improve this? And so innovation, I think, which has always been at the heart of our company, really was born right there in the spirit of the founding of the company, really. Yep. It evolved into automobiles. And then when you looked at, what evolved out of that, so we had Michelin maps, the Michelin restaurant guides evolved out of that. Why? Well, because there weren't any really good maps. And you've been to Europe, I think, several times. And the roads aren't quite like they are here in Minnesota. They're a little bit more winding, and it can get kind of confusing depending on what part of Europe you're in. So they developed these maps, and they wanted to help encourage people to get out and go travel and go experience new stuff. And so out of that was born this Michelin guide, which is, I hear it all the time in Hollywood when people talk about, I want to be at a Michelin-starred restaurant. It's the same Michelin. I know people, I work with people that went from the agricultural group over to what we call travel and lifestyle. Actually, the two complement each other very nicely because we're helping to grow the food that they're preparing at the end of the day.
That's incredible.
So if my boss is watching this, I would just really love the budget that we could do something like that one day for a really good deal or so. I'll throw my own personal aside in there. The company just continues to evolve. The tire is at the heart of everything that we do within Michelin. If it's an ag tire, passenger and light truck, which we're incredibly well known for, commercial truck, mining, aviation, we are at the first and at the forefront of a lot of this. I don't think there's hardly a tire we don't build the wheel, right? We've designed and successfully commercially launched the first airless radial tire. Lots of airless tires out there, but they're not true radials and how they carry weight and load and behave. And we have that now. We've been doing it for a decade and a half, somewhere around there. So we are incredibly innovative. It's a company that invented the radial tire, that everyone rides on exclusively now on a car is a radial tire. So tremendous innovation. We continue to innovate and push. We'll talk about that today. I heard what you were telling the folks we're going to discuss. And I get excited about it. So if you got to reel me in today, it's okay.
Yeah, that's good. No, that's a good intro to Michelin. Tell us about your own career. How did you get into the egg tire side?
So I'm from out east. I grew up kind of between South Carolina and Western Pennsylvania. I love working on the farm. Combine was my first word, according to what my mother said. I can only say that's what she told me, so I hope that's true. But I was very fortunate, been very, very fortunate and blessed in my career. I worked for one of the major three ag equipment manufacturers right out of college. Did a long stint with them. Got to travel to a number of different states that I covered, calling on dealers. Had a little change of kind of mid-change of career and went a different direction, was in the outdoor power equipment business, kind of a complementary business. For a number of years out east and had a very, very good time with those folks, learned a lot, and had some personal things change in my life. And ultimately at the end of the day, just said, I wanted to get back into being in corporate America. I'd left corporate America for a little bit and actually kind of missed it, but I always loved agriculture. I was sitting in an interview with a fine gentleman from Michelin, still there, but he was one of the hiring folks at the time in our HR group. And he said, look, I know you're in here talking about a commercial truck job, but you've got a lot of ag background. And how would you feel about coming onto our ag group? I think you might be a good fit for it. And I said, okay, I'm interested. Where at? He goes, well, it'd be out in the Dakotas. I'd never set foot in this part of the world. And the instructions when I left my house in Pittsburgh at the time we were living, I flew down to Greenville for the interview. My wife said, husband, I love you. I know you're going to do great. I want to move south. So finished up the interview, came home, and I said, South Dakota. And she said, that is not the South that I was hoping for. I was really hoping for a different one, South Carolina South. But no, nonetheless, took the role. Been out here 11 years now. I love everything about this part of the world, minus the winters. But I also like the lack of people, and the winters are the reason we don't have more population. So I guess you got to take the bad with the good. So here we are today.
That's definitely a big change.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh to South Dakota.
And I've been fortunate. We have 6 kids, and 5 of them all kind of followed us out here. So that's been a lot of fun. And now I've got grandkids out here as well. And I can't believe we've been living out here. It seems like a blink of an eye, quite honestly. Unless just mid-January, you know how that goes, and it feels like
it feels longer. So what is your current role at Michelin?
So currently I am a agricultural account executive. I think that's the fancy formal name of my title. I cover both the Dakotas as my primary area of responsibility, both the Dakotas, Montana, Washington, Oregon, for tire track business. And then I kind of give national support for anything related to CTIS just because of my background with that as well.
So let's talk about CTIS a little bit. We actually, it was interesting what you were saying about Michelin absorbing the bumps in that innovation. From my mother's side, our family, when we first got into tires, it was on the egg tire side. It was my great grandpa was switching customers over from steel wheels on their tractors to pneumatic tires.
Oh, wow.
He put a gallon of fuel in 2 tractors, one that had steel wheels, one that had rubber tires, and he would compare and show how much further down the field the one with the rubber tires went on 1 gallon of fuel.
That's awesome.
Yep.
And we're still doing those kind of tests today.
So that was fuel efficiency. And then the other thing he also was testing was soil compaction. So he would have a farmer run over his foot with the rubber tired tractor, which back then was probably a 4.8N or something. And then he would say, okay, now you do that with the steel wheel tractor, which obviously they're
not going to.
And the point of that was how much less soil compaction there was.
Right.
Pretty incredible that 100 years later we're talking about the same things.
Aren't we though? Things just don't change that much. We got running water and cell phones, but I mean, it's kind of the same thing that we're talking about. You're 100% right.
So that's kind of a cool story. But and obviously from steel wheels to rubber tires, and then kind of the next big transition was from bias tires to radial. The next big switch then, which Michelin also was the innovator for, was from radial tires to IF and VF technology.
Yep, we've been in that IF VF game longer than anyone. We're the ones that invented it originally, right around 2 decades plus now.
Yep.
That we've had that technology. And look, I mean, the reason is because you look at the challenges that we have in the North American, because I don't want to forget about our brothers up in Canada. Our North American markets, they just saw them a lot quicker over in Europe, right? They got more population density, land is more scarce, a lot more restrictions, I think, from the government on how things are run. So we're starting to run into all those same issues. They just were ahead of us on running into those issues and having to come up with a solution. So the idea with that tire originally was kind of twofold. One, guys were having to spend more and more time on the road, right? And what do we tell? Doesn't matter whose tire it is. And you guys have some great premium brands that you're selling. But if you're setting a pressure on our tire or any of our competitors, if you want to be true to your customer, you know you've instructed your sales staff, I've talked with them too, you got to set that pressure for the worst case scenario. And what's the worst case scenario? It's running down the road. And when you combine that with the idea that, especially in Europe, right, their practices of farming are a little different from ours, but almost everything is attached to the tractor itself, right? Either via 3-point, front and rear 3-points, very common. They're on singles because they have a lot of width restrictions. So you have all these factors. Well, if I've got a single, a 710 70R42 is a super common rear tire size over there with 670 30s up front. We've got more mass. Their transmissions are going quicker. We've got to necessarily now have more air in that tire, more air pressure in that tire to support all that load and that speed. I don't care whose tire it is. I mean, it's just simple physics. So Michelin looked at this and said, look, if we get more air pressure, the problem is when we get to the field, we're really hurting the soil, right? For the exact same reasons that your great-grandfather?
Yep.
Yeah, your great-grandfather saw that same issue 3-4 generations ago. It compacts that soil. You're taking out all the air, the water, but really that air and that, that porosity of that. So it inhibits that ability for roots to develop and grow.
Yep.
And they recognize this just more quickly, and they didn't have the number of acres to play with that we do here. And so, at the end of the day, Michelin is always looking at what solution, how can we have the best solution to help move people forward, right? That's a big slogan of ours at a global level. So there were some very brilliant engineers, and they looked and said, hey, we can build a tire that has more flexion, the same physical dimensions, 710 70R42. I can hold now 20% more weight at the same pressure if it's an IF, increased flexion tire. Or conversely, I can carry that same load now with 20% less air pressure. And even at that low air pressure, because of the design, the brilliance of the design and the casing changes and everything else, we can tolerate the heat when we're running down the road. So now we can get to a lower one-size-fits-all pressure. It was a huge step forward, right? Because of how much less compaction they had now that we're getting better treatment of the soil. So we started with the IF, they got some more experience with it, and then they pushed that technology even further now to what we have in VF, right? VF is very increased flexion. Not a real fancy name, but that's what it stands for. And that relationship, instead of 20%, goes to 40%, right? So now we can handle the same load at 40% lower air pressure all the time. That's huge. That's a monstrous step forward.
That makes a lot longer footprint.
Much longer footprint, right? Now you get into, and this is one of my things today I like to talk about. Okay, so we get down to these really low air pressures. How well do you perform now with those really low air pressures? And I think I'm very proud of the work that our engineers have done. I've been honored enough to have some of them actually ride with me here over in South Dakota where I live. We can create a tire that will go to very, very low air pressure. And our bead design inherently still stays seated on the rim, so you can apply a lot of torque to that rim. You don't see a lot of rim slip. We've done piles of tests on this internally to look at how well we perform and design against that. We do very well in our Stubble resistance, that's been a real big one. Not an issue in Europe, but something that Michelin was happy to address. We've had some brilliant chemists come up with some really great compounding to help resist stubble erosion and stubble damage, which is kind of unique to North America. And we'll talk about this later with CTIS. Can you do those cycles over and over and over again, changing air pressure, and still have a casing that will endure that, year after year in the environments we have? So yeah. It's cool. I get passionate about it.
Yeah, and that's what from our when I first learned about CTIS, I was very intrigued with it because to me that was the next natural step in being able to get the least soil compaction and the best performance out of egg tires. But how important do you feel, and does Michelin feel, that variable air pressure is for the future of farming?
Hopefully I can speak for Michelin. I think Michelin thinks it's important enough that we bought multiple companies.
Multiple companies?
Yes, so we bought back about 7, 8 years ago. Michelin was on a bit of a buying spree, and we bought 2 CTIS companies. One is PTG, who you guys are very familiar with, out of Germany. They're the inventors of what we call 2-line central tire inflation system technology, and we can dive into that later. But they've been doing agricultural specific design and manufacturing for over 30 years now. So we bought them back in 2018 lock stock, and we have been developing tires in tandem with that. I think, and I've had a lot of conversations with various OEs, I think we're on the beginning edge of CTIS integration into, say, our big high horsepower tractors and other applications. We're kind of where we were 25, 28 years ago with auto steer. And when I was coming out of college, I remember auto steer was a very new thing. And I remember some of the conversations with farmers, guys saying, I can steer. I can, get my tractor to the end of the field. What do I need this for? And funny enough, when we were doing a few years ago, we were working with Wayne Muller doing some prototype testing on that planter system for the NT planters. I was sitting with Wayne, and his subscription happened to run out one Saturday morning while he was planting for his auto steer. His John Deere subscription expired, and he had to wait for his son to come back and re-up his subscription. He just looked at me, he goes, "Well, I'm done planting for the day," until Pat comes home to help me.
Wow.
And I said, Wayne, you're old enough. You remember how to use the steering wheel, right? He goes, "Yeah, but in all fairness, I didn't put the marker down. But even if I did, it's not worth it. There's too much waste. It costs me too much money to not allow that perfect control that the auto steer generates." And I think, you look at that evolution of how farmers have viewed that. And, Wayne's a fantastic guy. He's a little older than me, but he's been through that full evolution of seeing that. And I think we're at the early stages, or the cusp, if you will, of that same understanding and acceptance of CTIS. You got it very early, right? But you're a tire guy, but you saw that and understood it and got it. I got passionate about it myself a few years ago after just doing the math, right? Go out, weigh a bunch of equipment, and you set pressures. And when you start looking at all the different configurations, you go, geez, this one size fits all thing is not very efficient, right? And it leaves a lot on the table.
Yeah. So you feel like that essentially CTIS will be like auto steer, where every commercial farm wouldn't even contemplate going without it? Is that kind of your thought?
I do. Now understand, I'm saying that, and it's going to take a lot of years to get there.
Yeah.
This is that will not be an overnight thing. I think folks have to, it's again, they got to see it to believe it, right? American farmers are like that. And so they'll want to see and understand and have that value association.
Yeah. No, I think
we're doing a lot to try to help push that along. You guys have been fantastic with it, I think, because we're showing the data, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, if it's going to add more dollars to the bottom line, well, in today's precision farming world, and if commodity prices are low, you need them extra yield and the extra dollars to make it profitable. If it makes the difference between being profitable and not profitable, you're going to want to have it, aren't you?
Yeah, and look at all the work you guys did with AgRevival. To me, the takeaway was, I don't know what you thought when you read the data. When I read the data, I said, I can justify this on virtually every single planter that gets sold today. Why would you not do it?
Yeah.
Like, it pays for itself, just like you said, Ben, so quickly.
Yep.
Why would you not do it? To me, the only reason you wouldn't is because maybe you want to go to tracks. But if you're going to have a tired machine that's pulling a planer through your field, and unless every field is literally out the doors, you never have to road.
Yeah,
it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is we're seeing in a lot of studies that the low inflation tires easily outperform tracks for soil compaction as well.
Wow.
There's obviously still applications for tracks, like your big
100%.
carts and things like that. But
100%.
On the tractors, a low air pressure tire actually does less soil compaction.
Good. Now,
But yes, CTIS is for every piece of equipment on the farm, or what is the applications where you would see that?
I don't think so. Just like I'd never bought into the notion personally that there's a one solution for everything the best. Just like you said, I think sometimes tracks are the best solution. Sometimes a standard tire is. I have a tough time, honestly, with agriculture today, believing that if I'm doing something genuinely productive in a field that I want a bias ply tire touching my field. But I don't think you always need IFVF. I don't think you always need CTIS. Here's where I think CTIS makes a lot of sense. Where the application has a big shift in weight and speed, and the customer's going to road a lot. And if we just go back and do the math, right, the basic weighing it and go into the data books, it is mathed out every single time I've done that. So I think if it meets those two criteria, that's what I'll call, as a salesman, the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah, okay. Yep. Big shifts in weight and speed and doing a lot of roading.
A lot of roading.
Yep. Okay, very good.
Yep.
So PFO, the egg tire industry has a ton of acronyms. So tell us about PFO. Let's learn about a new one.
So PFO is coming. So where I think a lot of guys now are familiar with, I'll back up one step, CFO, cyclic field operation. That really has to do with your harvest type applications in agriculture, sprayers, planters, combines, anything where you're onboarding and offloading a lot of weight, but it's only temporary, right? You're not maintaining kind of a average pressure in the load or mass in the field all day. I always like to explain, I'd say CFO is kind of like horsepower boost on a tractor, right? It's a temporary boost that we give in load capacity, but only for a finite amount of time, so that you can run a lower pressure without, and the tire's designed to take it. You're not going to damage the tire.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So like a grain cart or something, or a
right.
combine that's loading
Combines,
up
grain
and then
cart.
emptying out.
110%.
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. Now we're looking at, think of PFO, pneumatic field operation, as the next step beyond that. But what it really means is we'll give even lower numbers that a farmer could achieve in the field, of which I'm not at liberty to tell you where we're.
That's exciting. I'm glad to hear that. That's good news.
But it's coming, is all I could. It's really cool. Like, I really geek out over it. But it'll let us get to some crazy load numbers that, everything's well and good until I take the book and when I weigh it and I look at the configuration, and then, I sign off on the little sticker that I pop in the window of the cab and say, there's the pressure you can run. And that is me endorsing, Michelin endorsing that tire will run at that. And I've been the one that's approved. It's kind of like a doctor signing off on the script. I mean, it's a stamp of approval. We will be pushing, Michelin is pushing that, hey, we want to go even lower, these even crazier lower numbers in the field, so we can get better performance, better than VF performance in the field. But the only way we're going to authorize that is if you have a way to reinflate the tire, because you cannot go down to those pressures. And if you start roading, you'll wreck the tire. And that's on you, right? Or it's not safe for operation. So the only way that we can do that is with the understanding that you've got a mechanism in place to reinflate the tires, AKA CTIS system.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're pushing that right now. I don't know where we're at with the conversations, but I know we're pushing for it, and we are continuing development. And I get excited. I mean, Michelin is known for being the leading edge for technology, and I don't ever want us to be thought of any differently. I love agriculture because it's like this little hidden gem of insane amounts of technology, right? Not just tires, but the equipment itself, the agronomy, everything. There's massive. I tell people all the time, the only thing more advanced than today's like large tractor, large combine, or sprayer is a brand new airplane that they flew on to come here to the flyover states and see all this big equipment, right? It is really, it's very exciting stuff.
When people are asking about our industry and our business, trying to explain to them how much goes on a farming operation and how much a farmer has to think about. I think people underestimate how complex a farming operation is. I mean, their equipment is complex, but if you think about all the decisions they're making around the seed and the fertilizer and what they're going to plant and everything, there's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So related to that PFO, I was looking at your agro pressure online tire pressure calculator, and it's a new version of your online calculator. I was quite impressed. I noticed it actually has estimated weights of equipment on there. I thought that was very cool.
We're trying to make that more and more user-friendly and with good data. We're Michelin, we're all about data. So that when a customer wants to get the best performance out of his tire, he can do that without having to wait for me to come out with a set of scales, or even for a dealer to come out with a set of scales. They can do that and really manage that the same way they're managing, the other aspects of their machine's performance.
Yep.
That's such a huge one. How many farmers have you or your staff talked to that they kind of look at the tires? It's holding air.
Yeah.
Must be good, right? But no idea about that. We know what a difference that makes in the overall performance.
We get a lot of farms calling us now and asking, hey, what air pressure should I run
Right.
on this? And to be able to give them a tool like this so they understand what the data is you need to know to be able to know what air pressure to run, I think it's a powerful tool. And helps them think wisely about the tire pressure on their farm too.
It changes the conversation when you're really talking about it with some of your more, I call progressive thinking farmers, right?
Yep.
They're really thinking about, okay, and I've had this conversation before with guys, if you think about a field like a factory, everything that touches that factory floor is going to take away from the percentage of efficiency, right? So I know some farmers that, I will, as a rule, never drive on a guy's field with my truck, ever. I park in the ditch. And I have seen farmers fire people that they had hired for driving a pickup truck on it because how much compaction and damage. And then they can see it, right? Then they can see those lines all year long, right? And see it in their yield data and everything. Those guys that really understand how critical it is that they take care of the soil. That's like the primary part of their factory, if you will. It has them thinking in a whole new way, doesn't it? Then they're examining everything and realizing how many wheel positions they have and get a little overwhelmed, I think, sometimes, because it can end up being a lot of money.
Yeah, I was shocked by a study I read about once where every year 70 to 80% of a field gets driven on.
Yep.
Which is an extremely high percentage. So if you can either cut that down or reduce the impact of it, that makes a big difference on most of the crop.
And you see they've been trying to cut it down, right? Look at the standard size sprayer out here now. It's 120 feet in width, right? When you and I were younger, it wasn't that big. It has grown like crazy. I think they got to a point, and now it's shrinking back down when we look at planters. There was a trend for a while, get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yep.
But I think they're shrinking them back down and getting them more efficient just because too big isn't necessarily a great thing for moving around. It's crazy when you look at how much of each acre you touch. And every time you touch it, you're taking away from its potential productivity.
Yep. Well, that's good. All right. So now we'll play our between two tires game. You've probably seen this on previous videos. So let's say you're a farmer and it's summer now. So let's say we're coming into the harvest time. So on a combine, let's say you're going to choose between big LSW super singles or duals, but we're not going to talk about Michelin tires. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be either Firestone Maxi Traction duals or LSW super singles. What would you choose for your combine for your operation?
I would go with the duals.
Explain why you would prefer them over the single 1400.
So we did some of our own footprint studies to answer that question on what it looked like. Had our field engineers set up that test and ran it just to see what the difference was. And here, at the end of the day, this is what's critical, is how long can I make that footprint? And we found on those 580, same combine, when we had the right pressure set with that highly flexible sidewall dual 580s on that combine, we had a bigger footprint, bigger total amount of square inches sitting on the ground compared to that 1400 single. And we went exactly by what the book said.
So even though a 1400 is a lot wider tire, and you've got a lot more width of tire on the ground.
Yes.
You're saying you had more footprint because it was longer?
Yes.
So if you could choose between a longer footprint versus a wider footprint, what would you choose and why?
I like the longer. I've seen it perform better in some of the adverse conditions. We've seen that. Here's a non-traditional use in snow. When we put some of these tires that can get very low pressure onto machines with CTIS in snow, like out in Yellowstone Park, the wider we've seen working with some of the operators out there tends to turn into more of a steamroller effect. It'll kind of bulldoze the stuff ahead, whereas where it's a little narrower but longer, it can climb up and over, and then it's got the total amount of square inches to keep that weight distributed nicely and evenly,
That's interesting.
and not fall back down.
Yeah, okay. So if you can get that air pressure down and lengthen your footprint, that's interesting.
And I'll say this too, Ben. Something else I think about is we look what's a really common dual today on a lot of combines. It's the 650, 85, R38, right? And I kind of get why. I spend a lot of time looking at that. When you look at the weight of where combines just getting heavier and heavier, and you want to run at that kind of one size fits all lower pressure, you can do that comfortably with the capacity, and that's 650. And what was it replacing was really the 520, 85, 42 was the go-to dual size for a long, long time. But the combines got a lot bigger, a lot heavier. And so what did they do? They went to a bigger tire. When you look at that VF technology, we don't have to keep going wider and wider and wider and wider in these bigger tires to get the same or better performance. And I've seen that with that 580. I know I come back to it now. You go to your very, very biggest combines now, these X9s, and I know C&H has got some really similar big sizes. Maybe you got to go to a 710 or something like that dual, but they're a different level of weight. But for a lot of the what I'll call the everyday combine that we see here in the upper Midwest, I can get better performance with a narrower tire, even with with that 580 VF 580 against your standard 650. I'd run that combination all day, and the tire costs less money.
Yeah, okay.
What a deal.
And one thing too I've noticed too is that you got to watch the actual width of the tread face of a tire too, because sometimes you'll have a 580 that has the same width tread face as what's called the 650. Maybe in a different brand or something, because it's something you got to watch
that gets into nomenclature. We've seen that we deal with some of that on especially in spare tires. When you look at your section width, those first numbers, right, for any of your folks that maybe you haven't talked about that with before, your section width is the furthest outside point to the furthest outside point.
So if the tire's bulging, it's the outside.
Yeah, but minus the radial load that could be, or the static load that could be on for that radial bulge. But it's designed from the furthest outside point to the furthest outside point, not your tread. And there are some differences. There's some flexibility in nomenclature, so it can get a little fuzzy, if you will. To either call something a little narrower or a little wider than what it really is.
Yeah.
I want a very flexible sidewall that when I drop pressure, I can lay out that long footprint. I can get 4 full lugs, for example, sets of lugs on the ground if I'm on a tractor or a combine. And
might make a massive difference.
Doesn't it though?
Yeah.
When you put those over a pressure plate, and we've done some of that before, or a pressure sensor pad, you can see it visually, you can see that. And we've done the compaction pits and all that as well, where you can just see it. It carries the weight so much better, not just at a surface level, but then as we go down, 18, 24 inches, what's that mean to the soil down deep? But there's no comparison.
All right, thanks for playing along with that game, Sean.
Absolutely.
So let's talk more about Michelin tires.
Sure.
What are some of the tires that Midwest farmers should be thinking about for their farm in the Michelin range?
The three ones that jump out at me first are going to be for your tractor and your combine, and really your sprayers. So there'll be 4 lines of tires right there. The tractor, either your Agribib 2, which is our standard radial line of row crop tractor tires for high horsepower tractors, and the complementing Ultraflex, right, that VF line, which is our yield bib tire. So that yield bib really is to complement the Ultraflex complement to our agribib row crop line. And honestly, in today's day and age, with how much tractors weigh, the transmission speeds that they have and everything, I'm leaning more and more towards Ultraflex, that VF technology all the way. I think you can make the argument for it.
Yeah.
Especially if that tractor's pulling a planter, it's a no-brainer in my mind. If it's just got grain cart duty or maybe some tillage duty, I could see where that agribib might be just fine for it. But if you're pulling a planter, 100% Ultraflex VF tire on there all the way. Combines would be that Cerex bib line that we talked about. We're in our second generation of that. We've increased load capacity. We've increased our cyclic ratings on that. We have both a 6 and 10 mile an hour cyclic ratings on there, which is why it has a CFO plus. The compounding has been outstanding against stubble wear, especially in soybeans. And then the other one would be our spray bib line. And we're fully into our second generation now, I believe it is. We have the spray bib CFO set up, so we're giving more and more expansion for what can you do in a cyclic load when you're in the field. And again, we start thinking about pushing the envelope on what's possible for protecting that soil. At the end of the day, it's moving the equipment the most efficient and protecting the soil.
Yeah, very good. So in like the US market, we run a lot of dual setups. In Europe, the same equipment, they're going to run a lot of times with singles.
Right.
Is that because of the width restriction mostly?
I think it is. I think so.
Do you see an application for that in our market more in the future? Or?
I think, yeah, and I'll come back to why I think our competitors maybe been a little ahead of it. This is just me speculating, so I can't say I speak for all of Michelin on this, but this is what I've seen. When you can narrow up your profile going down the road, that's very appealing, right? The duals are wider, especially depending on how you space them. So if we have a nicer profile, guys are having to spend more time now on the road. We're being forced just because of the farming economy, the state of the world, right? Guys are picking up land if they're growing, and it's getting further and further and further away from home base. And so they are by nature having to spend more time on the road. And it's why a lot of the problems that in Europe they were running into, 20 years ago, we're finally starting to run into. You don't have that contiguous land like we used to have,
Yeah.
right? I always tell guys, if you have that, good for you. I think that's wonderful, but it's simply the way the market's moving. So yeah, I think we're going to need it. I think it's going to become more prevalent over time.
Yeah. So Michelin tires, obviously you've got a lot of innovation and effort that goes into making the best tire. Sometimes it can be perceived as an expensive tire because, a lot of times it does come with a higher price tag.
Yep.
Which obviously speaks to the innovation and the R&D that goes into it. But how would you explain to customers how they get the ROI out of paying more for a Michelin tire versus a competitive brand?
Sure, and I think one is going to look at what the application is. If we're talking that kind of leading edge customer, and it's a tier 1 tire discussion, absolutely, I have no problem. And I won't lie, not always, but a lot of times we do have a higher acquisition price. But one thing that I always note with Michelin tires, if it's ag tires, commercial tires, passenger and light truck, we typically have a very competitive, if not one of the lowest cost of ownership, but we have a higher, acquisition price.
Okay.
So you got to look and understand, what are we measuring for your cost of ownership? Cost per hour, or number of hours that we can run, number of seasons before a tire fails due to stubble. As guys rode more and more, you'll start seeing much faster irregular wear on tires. And I get that one all the time. Michelin tires wear like iron. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that from folks. So it really depends on what the actual application is. How well can we put it down to a low pressure, and does that tire stay seated, and we don't end up with rim slip, which is going to prematurely wreck the tire.
Yep.
Obviously.
All right, so let's talk about Michelin's future a little bit.
Yep.
So we've talked a lot about innovation.
Yes.
And some ideas there, but looking forward, what's some of the innovations or changes Michelin is making? I think I heard something about Michelin bought out Camso. Is that correct?
Yes. So we bought Camso, the track manufacturer, several years ago, We've been going through a really interesting integration process. But the team I'm on, we've brought over a number of the folks that are Heritage Camso, and their knowledge and passion and expertise is the same as Michelin's. And I noticed that from day one. Those folks are the Heritage Camso folks. They're absolutely as well educated, passionate, knowledgeable, technical as we are. So now it's a matter of upload what we know into their brains and get the download out of their brains of what they know in tracks. We've got a great multi-prong approach, if you will, for mobility solutions in agriculture. And I think that's only going to keep getting better. We just finished a 9-figure upgrade to our primary ag manufacturing factory. And so—
Is that in France, or where's that at?
No, that's down in Kansas. So
you're talking for the
tracks.
Yeah,
the tracks. So, we've got so much more capacity now to hit the demand. That'd been a challenge in the past, and that's fair enough. That was something we got dinged on. But we've made a massive investment after Michelin bought Camso into that primary factory, and just a lot of development that's continuing to evolve over there right now on the track side.
Is there some changes too with the Camso tire side of things, or?
Yeah, so we're exiting part of the business. I think that's been pretty well publicly announced. We're selling off portions of the business to CTIS. When we look at the construction tracks, the bias tires, and the manufacturing facility over in Sri Lanka, and now the brand name as well. So they've got options on all of those for purchase. That's going to happen over the course of a few years, so it's not an overnight process.
Okay.
But I think it'll be the right move to let us focus on kind of the core of the business for us.
So if CTIS buying the Camso brand name, does that mean you're renaming the egg tracks to Michelin then? Or?
They'll be renamed. I don't want to speculate because I'm not in on those conversations.
Okay.
I would imagine it'll be named Michelin something.
Track bib, maybe?
Yeah, I would love to hear any suggestions from your audience on what they might want, because they will come to us from time to time and ask, hey, what do you guys think for nomenclature, for names on stuff? But yeah, if anybody's got any good suggestions, if it was a Michelin branded track, let us know what you're thinking. But it's going to be the same fine folks at our manufacturing facilities building those tracks, same technology on all those ag tracks. So it's not changing. It's going to be a brand name change on it.
Good. Well, we've been talking quite a bit about innovation. We're kind of coming to the end of our session here, but let's play another little game.
Yeah.
So think of a space in the market or a gap in the market, and let's just take 2 minutes and innovate and design our own tire. What would it be? What tread design, what application, and what would you call it?
Now, when you say a gap in the market, are we talking that Michelin's got right now that we need, or?
Yeah, where you see I guess for our audience, it might be more interesting as an overall need, but I would say if you want to talk about a gap Michelin has, that'd be fine too.
Now, let's just talk about the market. One that I see all the time, and especially, I live over in eastern South Dakota, and lots of these babies got upended. We haven't even touched on this today, and no one thinks about it till it's an issue, but irrigation pivot tires.
There's a lot of them.
A lot of them. One of my colleagues did a pretty deep market dive on that, and it is a 6-figure number for wheel positions in this country alone. It's a huge number of wheel positions. And when I talk to farmers about irrigation pivots and the tires, one, there's 3 key needs I know that they have, which is traction, longevity, and just not going flat,
Yeah.
So there's really 3 major issues. You can always solve 2 of the 3. I would love it if we look at some of the other technology that we have within the Michelin offering.
Like a tweel?
Like a tweel, yeah. I've asked. We can't build it right now, I've been told, just because of some of our mold sizes and everything else. But it sure would be nice. Because it's basically, there's no speed to speak of, right? So it's ostensibly a static load that's always on that thing, right? Because it's moving at so many feet per minute, but it's slow. I mean, it could take hours and hours and hours for that to make a revolution. So we don't have a speed issue. but we want to be able to lay out a nice long footprint so we get the flotation to reduce rutting. Rutting is a huge issue, right?
Yep.
You hit those ruts. You know when the tap quits here in about late July and it doesn't rain again until mid-September, and so everything is just like cement out in the field. So you hit those irrigation pivot ruts, and I mean you're breaking stuff on the sprayer, on the windrower or tractor, whatever you're in.
Yeah.
So when you got that big footprint, we've got less rutting. It'll never go flat. Because of that big footprint, you got great traction.
Yeah, and if it's poly, in a tweel, is it poly?
The spokes are a proprietary, and I hope I get this right, or Tony's going to yell at me. A polyethylene blend, and those.
I'm just thinking that would probably last longer than rubber as well for longevity.
You got to. Well, you're never going to have a flat tire, number one, right?
Yeah.
But you're not going to have that. I was always curious. Every time I'm driving, you'll see where guys will go out and try to fix that and prep it. But how much loss is that? You know, when you look at how much loss is within each of those tire tracks, and of course, every time you add a section, then you've expanded the total amount of loss because the radius gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I like that idea. That's a good idea.
That would be my dream. And of course, then have an acquisition price that's palpable.
Yeah, that's going to be the challenge
for the people.
It's a lot of tires. So when you talk about the 6-figure wheel positions, does Michelin monitor that closely? Like how many wheel positions there is on tractors?
We're aware of it. We do a lot of. I think it really depends on. Yes, the short answer is yes. We know what the tire market looks like.
So basically, a wheel position means that that's in use somewhere out there. There's that many of them in use.
Yeah. So if you look at, if there's X amount of hundreds of thousands of irrigation pivots and there's assumptions you have to make on how many
educated estimate
towers you have, because there's 2 tires per tower. I did a lot of work on that with planners, and that really was born out of developing when PTG developed the CTIS system we have for the NT planners. Globally, Michelin wanted to know, hey, what's the market look like for that? I've got a rough idea. I mean, it's not like a car where they're registered. So you can just go to the government data and look. I spent months working with the USDA census information and making some extrapolations out of there, and then having to just call and spot check to see, okay, am I even on the right path here? Because all we're going to do is get a ballpark estimate. But are we thinking right? Are we analyzing the data right? There's a lot of the row crop planters, they have 8 wheel positions per machine. How many thousands of planters are there? You just multiply that number by 8. And, now they may not all be the same. Like on a DB planter, right? You got two different sizes of tires that constitute that planter. But if you go to an NT planter, when we get outside of right here and beautiful Redwood Falls, you go down to Iowa and they've got that NT planter is more prevalent, then it's 8 of the same tires all the way across that machine. I think it's important to know that stuff. And right now, we can get ideas on registration, but to know the true field population that exists out there, you got to do some interpolation of the data.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for
thank you for having me out here today, Ben. It's been a lot of fun.
And, good insights about Michelin tires. And I think one thing that stands out, I think it's fair to say that Michelin and NTS were aligned in that we're really trying to help farmers have a more profitable operation. The right tire for every application, the right air pressure to help increase them yields. And I guess I'd just say to our audience, if you're interested in this topic and you've got some ideas of how you can improve the setup of your equipment, any questions on how to get the right tire set up, would love for you to give our team a call, and we'll work with you to help get the right tire system on all your equipment and drive your farm forward. Thank you for watching.